first, I guess we'll talk about kind of the rationale here. And the primary rationale really is the environmental impact of the farming of livestock. That's the concern, which again can get into a very political arena. But the concern is that the factory farming of cattle specifically, but also poultry, is bad for the environment, and that it is unsustainable over time. So we should switch to more quote unquote sustainable forms of farming via farming plants, which, I mean, most of the time it ends up being soy, really, and a few other primary plant protein sources. So that is the rationale, at least that's listed in this article, or the rationale that the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee put out, that this is. And this is where I begin to kind of have a problem with it, where it's a little bit more about protecting the environment versus actually protecting human health.
Goes beyond that too, but keep going.
Which is like, if we're talking about the dietary guidelines for American human beings, shouldn't we be talking about what is best for human nutrition?
Well said.
But then you could make, then the argument becomes, well, having an earth to live on is important for human health. Yes. So, we could talk about, like regenerative agriculture and that it doesn't have to be so black and white. It doesn't have to be 100% plant protein or 100%, stockyard type of cattle production, which, does have negative effects, and the meat is lower quality. But that's kind of the battle that we're talking about here, because there is the environmental concerns, but then my concern is most people I sit down with are not eating enough protein
Bingo.
To begin with. Mm-hmm. So even now, most people are not eating enough protein to begin with. Rising cost of meat, people's consumption of meat has dropped, and that is exacerbating the problem. It's making it even worse. But there's also been this shift towards plant-based equals healthy. Plant-based is always healthy. Red meat is bad for you. So we already have a protein-deprived society, and then they're being led in the direction of a less efficient or incomplete protein source. So people are, well, I'm getting my protein. This says plant-based on the package because it's always packaged. And, someone who's probably not eating enough protein already, they're not getting enough quantity. Now they're not getting enough quality as well. Mm-hmm. So
it goes on and on. I'm just listening here. I'm trying to keep my shit together and stay emotionally controlled, going back to managing
being an adult.
Yeah, no, I say that half seriously. Yeah. There's a couple things here. I think the larger issue in general, and you nailed it, just with we need healthier human beings. Period, end of story. That's what humanity should be working for, is working for a healthier human being, because we've got problems. And the United States as a whole has one of the biggest problems in the entire world, largely the largest problem with unhealthy human beings. And then that's juxtaposed against a healthcare, insurance, medicine, right? When we talk about the FDA and all those kind of things, and how that is bolstered by having unhealthy human beings. Mm. So in terms of having healthier human beings, how do we do that? We're telling them what they should and shouldn't do, and what qualifies as something and disqualifies something else. What we need to be doing is educating them. Mm-hmm. We need to be educating them on the very basic foundation principles of being a healthy human being. And yes, one of those is nutrition. But going at it by reclassifying foods, or telling somebody that something is evil, or is by doing it or eating it, you are now causing problems for planet Earth.
Yeah, there's a guilt trip associated with meat eating.
Absolutely fucking ridiculous to me. I will never get on board with that. The second thing, because this article goes on, and I don't want to summarize it or paraphrase it, so I'm going to read it. One of the goals of the 2025 dietary guidelines set by the Biden-Harris administration, blah, 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 is to reflect racial, ethnic, gender, and geographic diversity in the United States. During the public meeting last week, committee member and Harvard University professor Deirdre Tobias said protein is facing a quote-unquote branding crisis because most people think of meat, poultry, and eggs when contemplating protein. Quote, if there are more plant sources of protein in the protein category, that could help overcome that, mislabeling or misnomer or misinformation by having it more prominently, Tobias said about moving legumes into the protein category. I'm going to go back to if you treat people like they're idiots, then that's what they're going to be, right? I find that statement to be very insulting. We're talking about DEI policy around food and nutritional guidelines. We need nutrition education. We don't need some Harvard professor or any other group of people for that matter standing there on the pulpit trying to reclassify foods or tell us what foods should be classified as and exactly what you should eat because of the guilt trip about some type of environmental crisis that we're in. There's a lot of debate about that anyways, right? While they sit there and drive their their electric Prius typing on their phones that were made by slave labor in China, right? And whatever else that's going on, that in wearing their leather shoes, right? Which were made by the cows that I ate, right? That kind of stuff. Like we could go on about this topic all day long and I'm not going to. Like I don't spend my time thinking about that. What I spend my time thinking about is what is the problem and what is the process-based solution to finding a solution to the problem? What is the process we need to go through? And putting people in a room every 5 years or whatever to come out with stuff like this, what has the result of that been? Instead of focusing on whatever result they want, which is clearly what this is, what do you think the result is that the human being wants on the other end? And my take on this, my gut's telling me that what they want is to just be to be happier, healthier, and be able to do the things that they want to do, eat the fucking foods they want to eat, and have a more vibrant life, live a little longer, don't be sick, not have to take as many medications. This stuff doesn't solve any of that. It only makes it only makes the problem worse. It's like throwing kerosene on a fucking grass fire.
It's already a problem, protein consumption. Yeah.
That in and of itself is a problem. But again, going back to dietary guidelines, what happened in the 80s when we came out with this, which is when this thing started, like this committee started, and we started throwing things at the American public, like the food guide pyramid. I mean, they're already, this is part of a response to understanding how wrong that food guide pyramid actually is in so many ways. And again, you make your own food guide pyramid. Like you're not, and what you do within that is up to you. That's the responsibility of being a human. It's a responsibility as a parent in order, with regard to what you're passing down to your kids, which has become the problem. And when did it all start? It all started then when the government tried to start telling us what we should be eating and how we should be eating it. Stop it. Like, stop it. Like, I'm not burying my head in the sand. I've just seen the results of what you've told people, and it's devastating. Devastating. We have the highest rate of obesity of any place in the entire world. We have the highest incidence of diabetes than any place in the world, the type 2 diabetes. We have the highest incidence of childhood type 2 diabetes of any place in the world. It's maddening, it's saddening, and we're only allowing, by accepting this kind of stuff as word, we're basically complicit. We're the collective we are complicit in making it worse. It makes zero sense to me. And then again, going back to the whole protein thing, we have issues. There are issues, but assigning that we're saying that there's some kind of identity crisis,
branding crisis.
Yeah, branding crisis or identity crisis, and that somehow if we just change the words, right, and we make people think that it's if you call it this, it's something that it isn't. Fuck, dude, we've been seeing that for a long time in this country, and it's caused nothing but divide, right? Politically, socially. We talk about social literacy and where people are coming into this kind of stuff. They are completely confused, and as a result, they become very divided. It's a bunch of sheep, like doing what somebody else is telling them to do, and it makes it very, very difficult for somebody to come up with the right answer for them and go through any kind of a process to find a good result at the end. And then the worst part about it is when it doesn't work out the way the government or somebody else told them, they blame
the individual.
Somebody else. Yeah. And then they expect yet somebody else from there to take care of their problem for them. Like, well, I should be getting free medical care, or this is somebody else's fault. They did this to me. No, you did that to you. And it started all the way back from you not taking personal responsibility for yourself and or buying into things like protein has a branding crisis. Give me a break.